Yo, how are you doing, folks? Welcome to episode 52. That's right, we have made it all the way to a year's worth of weekly broadcasting of the Simpa Life Podcast. I'm currently, as you're probably well aware, this month not joined by Mr. Maka. He is not co-hosting the podcast with me at the minute. Wherever you are in the world, brother, I wish you love and peace. Hope you're cracking on with things. Oh, there you go, getting some love from this evening's guest. So guest 52 is a bit of a sidestep from some of the other guests that we've had so far. It will be our first musician, will be our first DJ and producer. She began her musical journey in sunny old Scotland. I say sunny old as a northerner because I know you guys know what the weather's like up there. When she was just 17, this led to weekly radio shows, spots, which then led to physical bookings and playing live. This then allowed her to hone her skills more towards a jungle and drum and bass sound, playing her first headline set at Jungle Nation up in Aberdeen. I spent a winter in Aberdeen, and I can tell you that place needs jungle because it needs to dance to keep warm. Jesus. It's one of Scotland's longest running and oldest jungle nights. And this has then led to her playing some amazing sets around the world, as well as playing at Glastonbury, which is the world's largest grain field festival that I learned recently. And also a recent winner of the Best Female Jungle DJ for the We Love Jungle Awards in 2017. She is Mrs Magoo. How are you? How are you today?
Yeah, man, I'm doing really, really good. How are you?
I'm really good to get through that mouthful of an introduction that I've written for myself there.
That was quite a wee spiel, like, fair play, fair play.
I was trying to make sure that I touched on enough things. I looked at a lot of the sort of the nights and the promotions that you've been involved with, and unless you were someone that was involved with jungle, I suppose they're not really going to know. So I didn't want to kind of put too many names in the intro. I wanted to expand that in this conversation so that I suppose in some way you can give a lot of our listeners a crash course in jungle and drum and bass music.
Yeah, no, I've been super looking forward to this interview. So thanks again, obviously, for reaching out. Like, this chat's going to be fun.
Sure is. I mean, we obviously met at Paradise Gardens quite recently, and tried to sit down for a chat in the field, and subsequently had a couple of technical issues with camera and recording.
The gremlins were out in force.
They sure were. I don't know how on earth they managed to pack themselves into the boxes leaving my house, got down to the field and managed to sneak into the equipment we were using, but fair play to them. But yeah, I'm really glad that we've managed to make the time to sit down to record this. So yeah, I suppose could you give our listeners and our audience a bit of an introduction of sort of how you got involved in music and kind of, I don't want to say just who you are, but a bit of a more in-depth background on yourself.
Yeah, sure. So, like, honestly, my love for rave music purely came from my dad. You know, he brought me up listening to the old happy hardcore tapes from Helter Skelter, Dreamscape. I was stealing those off of him when I was like 8 years old, you know. So when all my friends were listening to boy bands, I was like, listen to this, you know. And it honestly, it just kind of spawned on from there. I've always loved rave music. I attended my first rave when I was 17, a night called Rebirth. I can't even remember who was headlining at the time. I'd been going to see bands and stuff before that, and then when I went there, I was just like, oh my God, this is it. Like, this is where I need to be. These are my people. This is my jam. And the rest is kind of history, really. After that, I've lived, breathed, slept jungle drum and bass ever since. You know, it's my life.
Wow. Yeah, really has. So did you find it sort of an easy transition? When I was looking sort of and researching your bios, that was what it kind of showed, was your real youth, as it were, your baptism of fire into music was happy hardcore, which for a lot of people that don't know is very much quite a nuanced niche sound of music for a lot of people.
It's quite funny because when I think about it now, I would describe it as just like chipmunk music. Like, it's mental, and I still obviously do have a little bit of nostalgia feeling for it, like especially the pianos that they used to use in the old school hardcore. But yeah, like once I'd made a couple of friends that were into drum and bass, like they just they pulled me over to the dark side. That was it. I was like, happy hardcore is good, but it's not this good. Like these drums, these bass lines, like, woo, it gives me goosebumps just talking about it.
Yeah, wow. I mean, yeah, the first exposure I think I had to kind of non-mainstream music was what we sort of termed in the North as New Monkey, after the club in Sunderland. And so that was sort of happy hardcore, but with more with an MC bass, bassy MC over the top, but speaking at such unbelievable speed. And so it led to sort of the underground movement, and it was before sort of digitalization. Everything was on tape. You know what I mean? I kind of grew up sort of in the era of transition into CDs and then into MP3s, things like that. And so, yeah, you kind of physically handed something. I remember the first time I was given something like that, I put it in and it was like, it's something wrong with the machine I'm using, because it was the tempo and everything was so far accelerated. The instruments that we used, the sound that was used to construct it was just nothing that I'd kind of heard before. And so I was drawn to it out of the fact that it was new and novel to me, if nothing else.
Yeah, absolutely. So different from everything that you were hearing everybody else listening to, that you were hearing on the radio, you know? And that's another thing that I love about rave music so much as well, is it literally brings people like from all different aspects of life, you know? It's so beautiful. It doesn't matter your background. It doesn't matter where you've come from. Like, it doesn't even matter how you dance, which is one of my favorite things about a rave, because, you know, when you go to a club, like, it's a different vibe. It's a different vibe at a club, but you go to a rave and people are all over the place. They're kicking their feet everywhere. They're waving their hands about. Like, everyone's just having a great time, and it's just beautiful. It's such a beautiful thing to be a part of.
Yeah, I think there is an interesting sort of juxtaposition between mainstream established sort of nights and the environment that creates is quite competitive. It's I'm being viewed, so you dress in a different way than you do for a rave. You dress to be seen at a rave in a sort of way, but it's a different kind of thing. It's not about maybe meeting a sexual partner or impressing friends or showing your clout. Yeah, that's that mechanism that they've constructed there, and we're allowed to that's facilitated with like fast food and taxis and all of the other infrastructure. But then there's these illegal rave scene of just it almost appears to the attendee that it organically arises, that the sound crew arrives, that the equipment, all of this stuff just appears, and it comes, and then for an evening everyone congregates together. And as I said, like the way you get ready for that is so different. And the mentality of going into it and what you're seeking from it is an entirely different form of connection. Yeah. And I think that's why people gravitate towards that scene. And they'll, like, I've got mates that have gone from the North down to French Tech before, and that, you know, I mean, the people who really put the miles in, they'll drive down for a couple of days just to experience that sense of connectivity and culture.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about French Tech as well. It's something that I would love to experience at some point in my life, like, for sure. It looks wicked.
It looks unbelievable. For anyone that doesn't know, French Tech is a giant free party event in France, and basically it's on an airstrip, and they put the rigs just in lines next to each other, and they make these enormous walls of sounds, and it is just, yeah, sort of next level, and it represents the cultures from each sort of country and community. And it's wonderful that it's something that yourself said before we started recording, that music kind of, it transcends. And I think it transcends language. It transcends
it's a universal language, isn't it? Everybody understands music. Everybody feels it, you know?
Yeah, well, I suppose it doesn't matter what language you speak if you stood in front of a dirty bass speaker, because no one's going to hear you anyway.
Exactly. Everybody understands that universal signal of
yeah.
Another one I would love to do that I think looks absolutely fantastic is that is it Burning Man? The one that's in the desert. Like, wow, that looks phenomenal, but also super intense. Like,
yeah, Burning Man looks like truly something else. I mean, there's a lot of people that have said that it's become quite corporatized over the past sort of decade or so, as these things sort of often do. But yeah, the idea of it, I mean, there are what do they call them? there's a burn they call them burn. That's what it is. They call them burns. There's a burn in Israel. I think at some point there's another burn that we're working on. It's somewhere in South America. So they are trying to put on like different events in different places and kind of spread that ethos and kind of the vibe of it. Because yeah, it seems to be full of really creative people that are really doing shit in the world. Do you know what I mean? And to get them all together in one place, kind of not allow, but allow them to take drugs and let them have this visual stimuli and all of this art and I suppose in some way kind of pageantry to stimulate that creativity.
It's wonderful the way that creatives bounce off of each other as well, because like, you know, even as a musician, like I can be with someone that's you know, into artistry, painting and graffiti, and I can get so inspired by their work, and hopefully maybe it does the same for them too. You know, it's funny how that kind of works. It's cool.
Yeah, I think it's kind of what we alluded to a few moments ago about them people wanting to travel so far to be around their people that, yeah, we find these kind of tribes, these groups and communities, these microcosms of communities. And I think that the internet has massively helped us do that. Yeah. That we can, instead of being an 8-year-old kid running around with a tape deck trying to get others to appreciate happy hardcore, nowadays that 8-year-old can be online and find thousands upon thousands of other fans from all over the world that would kind of be interested in that. Yeah,
crazy, because like if it wasn't for the internet, I honestly don't think anybody would know who I am. I really don't. I would still be like this little girl DJ in the village, you know.
No, I definitely can sympathize with that, because that's entirely how I've got to anything at all, is because the internet gave me an awareness of a world beyond that which I was kind of being told was there or being indoctrinated into. And then I, exactly that, as McKenna says, found the others. And once I kind of was with people, whether it be a kind of a rave and taking ecstasy or whatever, and going, we're not bad people. Why would they want to destroy us for this? Why are we not allowed to have this party? Why are we not allowed to dance together, yet we can go and get pissed in that pub and that's fine?
Oh, don't even get me started on that. I swear, like it makes me so angry that like alcohol is so freely available for people to buy, but yet these other things such as cannabis, psychedelics, mushrooms, you know, stuff from the earth, natural stuff, but we're not allowed to have it. Like the amount of alcohol related deaths and just I'll rant.
That was kind of the response that I was kind of hoping for in a lot of ways, and it leads me on to a question I wanted to ask you. Something I guess we both will have spoken to sort of in the past. At one Shambhala festival on a Saturday morning, I spent a few hours chatting with Aries. Yes. And we were talking about kind of an event that went down. I'm not going to name the festival because I don't want to get them in trouble, but there was an incident where some of the talent had drugs seized from them when entering the festival. And a lot of the acts had kind of been a bit like, this isn't on kind of thing. There's a discretion here. And the what do you call it? The amnesty box was subsequently raided, and yeah, some of the best sets by certain individuals were played, and it just we were talking about this paradox of how most of the music industry runs in some way in parallel to the trade of illicit substances, yet they're all branded towards alcohol. So a lot of the musicians I've met don't drink. They just don't drink, especially like night DJs, people that are on sets and shit. They maybe did in their youth, but the reason they honed their craft and were able to continue for 10, 20 years is they weren't drinking for 10, 20 years.
Yeah, I had to knock drinking on the head with gigs. I had a drink last night for the first time in a long time. One, I wasn't working. So, you know, I decided to let my hair down. I think I had 3 drinks. But I had to knock it all on the head because it was such a crazy lifestyle going to these gigs all the time, and people always like drink, and it's so easy to get sucked into that and be like, yeah, sure, and before you know it, like it's ruining your life. You can't perform well. You're ill the next day, which means your next gig's fucked. And it takes its toll on your body, on your mental state. And it was just like, I can't maintain this lifestyle. If I want to take this seriously and I want this to be my career, I need to, stop it all. So now I don't drink. Let's say maybe once or twice a year I'll have 2 or 3 drinks, and that's me. Like I'm a smoker.
Well, that's good to know, and it brings us on, I suppose, quite nicely to our next sort of section. I will give a shout out to your social media pages now, actually, at Mrs Magoo DMB, at Mrs Magoo _DMB on Twitter and Instagram. I think I'm looking at Instagram and Twitter, at Mrs Magoo on Facebook, at Mrs Magoo DMB, sorry, on Facebook. For people that have then sort of kept up with your stories on Instagram, will probably be aware that you do enjoy a good zoot, as is common parlance for a nice cannabis joint. So how long, and can you tell us about sort of your relationship with sort of cannabis? Like, how long have you consumed it, and how did you first get introduced to it?
Okay, so my dad is gonna hate me for saying this because I did start smoking it at 13 years old at school. Now, my dad is a big cannabis activist himself. He's very pro-cannabis. So I was always raised in that sort of environment. It was never hidden from me. He always, told me what it was. And, so I knew the score from young. So at school, you're with the kids, you try it. And that was it kind of really. And my dad was like, you're not smoking it in front of me until you're 16 years old. No. But you can have an edible with me. So I had an edible with him. I think I was about 14. Some hash cookies, and it was just one of the best nights of my life. I still remember it to this day, and it's something that me and my dad have always shared together. And over the years, I've realized how much it actually helps me with my anxiety, because it helps me sleep, it helps me eat, it helps me deal with social situations, like my gigs and everything. Like, I suffer from agoraphobia, so I went through a really, really tough period where I was housebound for 2 years. And between the music and the cannabis, that's what got me through that, because it was the cannabis that was helping me to get out the house. And it was the drive for wanting to play the music that I love so much and be with the people that I love so much that made me fight through that. And now I've been getting on planes, flying to the other side of the world, like by myself. I honestly, something I never, ever, ever dreamed I was able to do, and I truly do believe that is because of cannabis and music. Like my 2 therapies, those are,
Wow. That's something I can wholly, again, sort of sympathize with. Is something that we discussed off camera at Paradise Gardens a little bit. I was sort of saying, I got myself in such a horrible state with agoraphobia and a fear of my letterbox, because I was in such a state of finances that was that brown envelope going to slide through, be a benefit sanction?
God, brown envelopes still give me the fear now.
Same. I'm in a much better place. I can look at it and go, all right, I'll breathe, let's go through this. But the mechanism I'd kind of built up into my head, and the position that I was in sort of maybe 10 years ago, I was terrified of everything. So I'd sleep in to avoid the postman, so I didn't hear that flap of the sound of it. I would do everything I could to avoid it, and to avoid conversations with people, avoid, looking, even catching somebody's eye if I looked out the window into the street sort of thing, and didn't want to have to wave to somebody sort of jobby. And for years I then realized that cannabis was helping, but it wasn't until I kind of got involved more in this, and the merriment of the two really kicked in. So exactly what you're saying, that it was cannabis facilitated my ability to then start to travel, to move, to be able to be confident enough to speak and interact with others, produce sort of written work. And then I did the same sort of thing. I did a 6-week road trip around America in 2018, and I just went, screw it, I'm going to do this. Put everything into it that I could, and just rent a car, landed and drove 6,000 miles across like seven states. And it was purely just because of a I think I can do this. And everywhere I went, I was like, I know I can get quality weed. So the weed's there. The motivation is to be there to get to produce content, to grow as a person, sort of thing. And yeah, I attribute cannabis entirely to the start, the thing that motivated me to get out of that rut. And it is the thing that still now, some people say it's a crutch, but I wouldn't see it as that. It's something that I fall back onto if I need to, for that security, that safety, when I'm feeling vulnerable or overwhelmed by the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And can I just say, fucking power to you, by the way. Like, that is absolutely amazing. What an achievement to have done. And I bet it was the most amazing and liberating experience of your life.
Also terrifying, but yeah, entirely.
Scary as shit.
Yeah, but again, there's a Swedish philosopher that I often quote, Søren Kierkegaard, and he says that life can only be understood backwards, but must be lived forwards. And so since I got back from that trip, I had all these realizations. Like, I slept in bear country in Colorado, and I didn't realize until then I'd kind of left and I'd spoken to the ranger on the way out. You know, there was like logs had moved around my campsite. I didn't realize how bad that was. I went like off-roading accidentally in Northern California. And there's a video I recorded on my Facebook, which is literally, guys, I don't know if I'm going to upload this or whether someone's going to find this, because I'd followed like a 10-year out-of-date old sat-nav that I'd got with the car down like a back sort of lane that became like a dirt track, that became a dried-up riverbed, that became bumpy road. I put a log into like a dried-up riverbed bit, went through, broke the log, so I couldn't then move back, then started going, oh, it's fine, like scrolling out, going, eventually it connects to this, that connects to this. And then every road like was in turn left now, and it's just a wall of trees. It's like, yeah, that might have been a road, but it is not a road now. I uploaded this video going like, right, I've got no water. I've got like, I had I think it was a 5-liter jug of pasta sauce and pasta, because I was just like cooking out of my car as I was going around state to state. Yeah. I had loads of good weed, and I was just like, it's 100 degrees. If I walk, there's bobcats, there's this, there's that, there's all kinds of things. I'm like, it's just not worth. And then I kind of had this spark realization. That's why I recorded the video of going like, I'm going to write this car off. I'm just going to keep going. I'd rather, whatever state the car comes in, this is a reason I got insurance. So just kept going and going. And eventually, yeah, it hit a road section. And then I worked my way back down at the mountain track, found this first shop, went in and just kind of stood there drinking a kind of pop, looking at the guy being like, civilization, that's a man, that's a guy, that's a thing. I was so and then when I got back to the UK, and I was kind of like looking at the footage and looking at the roads that the areas that I traveled and stuff, and people kept saying like, well, how do you do this kind of thing? Like, I stopped in one of the most deprived areas of Fresno in a motel, because I just searched what's the cheapest motel. Turns out it's like one of the worst areas for gun violence and robbery. I didn't know. I was just looking for a cheap hotel. But all, like, you know what I mean? Is those things kind of taught me so much about myself in such a short amount of time that it was definitely worth the fear, the worry, and the anxiety, because it was a magical trip. It really was.
Yeah, that's fantastic, man. Wow, go on. Bear country, you nutter.
Yeah, and the first place I stopped was Colorado, and I drove through to going towards Mesa in the north, and it's like a big deserted area up there. But you go over this old silver mining village, and there was just a track, and I thought, I can go walk a track. I do hiking in the UK all the time. Not comparing the goddamn size of these two countries. I mean, you can fit the entirety of the UK comfortably in the corner of most states.
Right.
And so I walked around on this track. There was a sign saying, this trail is no longer maintained after this point. And I'm like, I'm fine. I know what I'm doing. I know that. Wander for about 10 minutes, and I come across this moose, mama moose and baby moose. There's a picture of it like on my Instagram. Yeah. And this thing, it felt like it was like 15 foot tall to me. It was like this monster. And I'm like with my little DSLR camera, and I try to get this shot. And then this overwhelming sense of, I'm a tiny little thing in the middle of goddamn nowhere comes over me. So then I'm a pacifist and a vegan, but I drove straight to Walmart and I bought a Bowie knife like that, like a hunting knife. Just to carry every time I was out and about. Because I was like, if someone's going to try and kill me, I'm at least going to try to not die.
Yeah, absolutely. Too right.
But yeah, it's so, wow. It's for anyone who hasn't traveled the States, man, what you see in the movies and what is projected to us through media is not what is there. They are a diverse people, man. It's unreal.
It was quite a funny one for me. I just remember the first time when I flew into Chicago, like it was such an eye-opening experience for me as to how small we are. and just how vast America is, because we come in like over Lake Michigan, and I was like, oh, there's the sea. And the bird next to me is like, no, that's Lake Michigan. And I'm like, that's a lake? Like, you couldn't even see the end of it. It just went on forever. And I was like, no way. Like, that was when it really hit me. Like, wow, like, this is big. I remember driving like across like 4 states. We drove from, hang on, brain fart. What's the one before it? Illinois, Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio. And like just that drive across those 4 states was just pure madness. Like so vast, such a big place.
It's so different as well, like the flavor and the feel of the different states. Like I had to drive Colorado to Oregon to go legal state to legal state. So I looked at the local laws. I was driving through, I think it's Utah that's in the middle, and they're 6 months in prison for a grinder. And I was like, fuck this. I've just bought like 3 novelty Colorado grinders. I've spent all this money on all these paraphernalia and stuff. So I was like, all right, I'll clean it at least. So then I went, I'll be smart. I'm going to eat all my edibles and smoke all my weed the night before. When I got in that car in the morning, Jesus Christ, I was so floaty. And again, every day in America, I got in the car and I had to go other side of the road, other side of the road, other side of the road. Yeah. I had a little thing on my sun visor that with an arrow pointing just to remind myself to like, oh, no, I'm on the right side of the road. Because it's so vast, you can go hours without seeing anyone on the road. So I'd turn like left onto a carriage and stay in the left lane. And then I'd just be going and it wouldn't be just someone's beeping at me and flashing. I'm like, la, 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 la. I'm like, oh, shit. Getting rounded out of the way. But I had to do 900 miles in one day to get from, I can't remember where I was staying with some farmers at Hope Hemp Farms in the Northwest. And I drove into, I think it's Pendleton in the southeast of Oregon. And the whole way there, I was like, I've got no weed. I want to get a weed shop when I get there. But because it's a 900-mile drive, it's like the majority of the day. So I'm watching the clock the whole day going like, I can get there. The shop shuts at 7. And then because you go through time zone changes, it was just messing with my head. So I'm just like, I don't know what. So I pulled up about half an hour before the weed shop was closing. And this is in the most rural ass of nowhere. And it was beautiful because I just sat there and I watched soccer moms, I watched grannies, I watched like kids coming straight from basketball practices, and people from all over just pile into the weed shop, buy all their wares and just leave. And it was just such a refreshing feeling, but an odd paradox that I had to go make sure. I was worried about everything that I went through. And on that 900-mile journey, my windscreen broke. So I had to stop in Salt Lake City and change my car over. Because when I rang the car people, they went, well, I can't even remember where I was. They were like, basically, you are X amount of miles from the nearest person that can get out to you. Or if you continue to drive the vehicle, you could change it out. And so the woman's then trying to explain American insurance laws to me because I'm going, well, I've seen a lot of people drive around with broken windscreens. Am I going to get pulled for this?
No MOTs.
Yeah. And so she's like, as long as the vehicle is safe enough for you to drive and you feel confident to do so, then you can drive. And I'm literally just like, pet. It hit, and it's like, and I'm saying like it was a quarter-size hole, but it split down the middle and then just went across the windscreen. So it was actually, in the end, I drove, but it was literally, I lowered my steering wheel like that, and then the cracks are there, so I had that just enough of the bottom, and so I'm driving like this. It was a horrible, horrible experience. And then on the way to the airport, there was literally just like cop bikes, and they park in twos. So the first one tags you, and the second one chases you.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to keep up with the traffic flow that's speeding, then slamming to normal speed, then speeding. And then obviously my windscreen's like this and I'm trying to merge and change. It was just such a woof experience. And then checking in that motel that night and just literally throwing everything onto the bed. And I went crazy in the weed shop. I must have spent a couple $100 in that shop. Just like, I want some of this, some of that, give me some of this.
Yeah, geez it all.
Yeah.
No, it's a madness driving out there. Like I don't drive myself. Obviously, I've been driven out there. The no MOT thing just fried my nut. Like the conditions of some people's cars that I've seen on the road was like, oh, wow, you're gonna die or you're gonna kill somebody else. And then the other thing that got me was at traffic lights, even though it's on red, you can still turn. But there's still traffic coming at you. Like, oh my God, the amount of times I thought I was going to die was so bad.
Yeah, so such a unique experience, man. And then it fucked with me coming back to the UK because I obviously
Yeah.
spent 6 months. So then what I was trying to do was I found myself on the motorway driving home because I landed in the south and then picked my car and then drove like 300 miles back to the north. And I was driving in the middle of 2 lanes on the motorway because I was trying to put my position like me next to that line. But obviously I'm on the other side of the car. So my instinct was just constantly pulling myself over. So even now, sometimes at roundabouts, it still messes with my head at roundabouts because in northern Colorado a few years ago, they introduced roundabouts. And so I was literally, everyone was telling me, oh, it's fine driving in the States. There's no roundabouts. Nothing will mess you up. And I went to a national park and you come off this highway section and there's just this giant roundabout. And I'm like, go right, go right, go right, go right. And I'm still trying to turn left and I'm having to talk myself and pull the wheel around to go around it.
Oh, that's funny that you mentioned roundabouts because they're only just introducing them into certain states in America.
Yeah.
And the reaction to the roundabouts has been quite hilarious.
Yeah. American drivers, I think I found 2 different varieties. There was those that were overly cautious and those that just didn't give a shit. And you could never quite tell who was who until they made a maneuver.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the worst one was I decided to, I'll get the cheaper flight. So I landed in central Denver and I had to drive through Denver to get to my motel. And so I thought, right, pick up my car, drive through Denver, go to the motel, drop my shit off, go to the nearest weed shop. You know, Bob's your uncle.
Yeah.
Literally, I was in the country 45 minutes and I was at a light section and I drove straight. I cut the guy on the left to go straight because I was in the wrong lane. And I thought, I can just put my foot and move in front of it. It was a cop car. So woo, lights go up and I'm just, oh my God, I'm bricking it. So I'm sort of like this on my lap, getting my passport and my driver's license. And just the guy walks up and literally, because what they do is they unclick the gun holster, the clip on the top, and they come and they put a fingerprint on the back of the car in case you shoot them and they drive away so they identify you later.
Yeah.
My heart's going like 10 of a dozen, and it sort of pulls down. And I got, sorry, officer, I've been in it's like 9:30 in the morning. It's rush hour, so I'd completely mistimed like traveling through Denver. And explained the situation. You're a Brit. Oh, hey man. Oh, hey. As soon as he figured out like it was English, he was just like, no problem here. And
as soon as you hear your accent, that's how you win it. Yeah,
and he gave us one of this his business card, and he wrote something on the back of the region that he was in. He said, if you get any trouble while you're in Colorado, give me a shout. And I'm like, okay, cool. And he goes, do you know where you're going? And I went, yeah, just around the corner, because I didn't want to say I was going to Fox Cannabis, which was the dispensary that I was literally, it was the next block. It was around the corner. And she said, do you know where you're going? I'm like, yeah, thank you very much. And so I get back and I deliberately then turn the wrong way, go the long way back around to go to the weed shop and then pull outside. Because again, I didn't know. And it was weird. Again, in Colorado, when I was in Mesa, I was heading up there to go visit Sonia Gomez, who runs like a massive Facebook cannabis awareness page. Mm-hmm. She lives on tribal land up there. And on the way there, I was just like, I fancy something a bit different. So I pulled off the highway, found this weed shop that had been advertised on giant billboards all the way up. Yeah. Went in, bought something, and just had sort of t-shirt and shorts on. Bought the things, and a cop car drove past slow. And my instinct was to hide the bag. So I'm trying to hide the bag under my t-shirt. Cop rolls his window down and just kind of points and laughs at me and just drives off. It was just the most like, what the fuck? It was like, I've got an ounce of weed. I think there's a picture actually on my Facebook, and it's the weed on the front seat with its seatbelt on going, come on, Weedy, we're off for an adventure. Like,
it's funny how, obviously, because of how we've been raised here in society here and how cannabis is treated and how you're such a criminal, like, to go over there, like, even though you're doing nothing wrong there, you still feel like a criminal, don't you? Like, it's instant paranoia, like, oh no.
Yeah.
It's mental.
It is. There's a lot of really weird loopholes there, though, because that's what I found when I landed in Colorado. So once I dealt with that, I mean, literally, so this is how fried my brain was. So probably a measure of how good that weed was, to shout out Fox Cannabis, because that evening I locked my keys in the trunk. or as when I rang the mechanic and said in the boot, the guy was like, in your boot, take it off. Well, I know the trunk, man, the trunk. And so it was the brand new lowest range Toyota Corolla, and it was the first generation I think they've made where the seats don't come down. Mm-hmm. So I dropped them in the boot. The car would, like, because I'd locked, the car was on a lock thing, so once the boot shuts, it goes back into immobilized way. And so this guy turned up. We figured out he popped the car fairly fast, like got it, and then got the alarm off, but we couldn't get the seats down. Right. And so for about half an hour, he's got on YouTube on his phone, looking at other guys of how you do this. And in the end, what we settled for is he opened the seats like this between, the 1.5 seat and the 1 seat. I've got my arm in like this and got a flashlight. I'm fishing around trying to pull the goddamn keys out. So yeah, get that shit in. And then I got to roll a joint. And I'm like, what can I do here? Because it's like, there's no clubs, there's no public consumption. I was like, there's a park next door. Mm-hmm. The sign on the park says it's illegal to smoke weed here. So I'm walking around with a joint going, well, I can't smoke. So I smoke the joint anyway, because obviously I'm used to breaking the law in the UK and just having a joint and keeping an eye out for the cops kind of thing. Just as long as you can get it away from you fast enough that before they get to you sort of job. And I went back and spoke to the guy at reception and was like, so what's the crack? And he went, well, there is a smoking fine here of $250. I kind of looked at him and I went, smoking what? And he went, there is a smoking fine here for $250. So I stayed there for 3 nights, and he basically was saying to me that if you smoke it, you can smoke in your room for 3 days and we'll just charge you $250. Right. So I could sit and blaze up all day in the room and they didn't care. The cleaners would come in and no one would do anything. All it would do is they'd put a $250 smoking cleaning fee. So that's kind of the loophole that kind of got around it.
Yeah, that's good to know if I'm ever over that way.
Yeah, if it's a legal state, smoking doesn't differentiate between vaporization, tobacco consumption, or cannabis consumption.
Ah, cool. Yeah.
Is worth knowing.
Yeah. I think Seattle was probably one of my favorite legal states that I went to. I loved Seattle. It was such a fantastic city. And I smoked something called Blue Magoo out there, which I thought that was amazing because, it's my namesake, kind of. Mm-hmm. But I got to smoke that in a stretched dually truck. It was quite an experience, like.
I bet.
Yeah, really, really amazing city though. Like, shout out to them boys out there at the substation and that. Good eggs. Mm-hmm.
Yes, Seattle's home to the world's oldest and longest running cannabis. We call it protestable. There's a guy, Vivian Peak, started at Hempfest. That was actually the reason I was out in America doing that road trip, was building up to that. To drive up to Seattle. And I found the same, was just the culture and the vibe of the people. Like, I made a point of walking to my hotel room after the event each night so I could walk through the city and through the different areas and just experience the different kind of subcultures that have conglomerated together to create this wonderful hub that is Seattle.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. It was one of those places that's always kind of stayed with me out of where I've been to, Loved it.
Yeah, they're the funny old state. I think they're the only legal consumption state in America that doesn't allow home growing. So you can't you can't grow your own weed in the state of Washington.
That's a bit backwards, isn't it?
It is. And unfortunately, they're looking to maybe slide a bit further backwards. You know how you'll have found this traveling as a cannabis consumer, that the UK is basically one of the only places that talks about like skunk psychosis. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's now a narrative that's gaining traction in places like Washington and Colorado. So that they're trying to push in lobbying to cap the percentage of extracts and the strength of certain flowers and other products, because they're saying that it's leading to detrimental effects amongst teenagers, and they're relating it to higher depression rates and higher anxiety. And so it's actually something I wanted to ask you about, is because you, with being quite a successful musician as well, do you find that, my theory on it is that the depression anxiety that is experienced by cannabis consumers is because they get a heightened awareness. They're then privy to a different way of living than they have been told is the only way to live. And that then it's the juxtaposition of that lack of acceptance, of that kind of vilification of being a cannabis consumer in a world that doesn't accept them.
Yeah, no, it does. It, like I said, like I was talking about earlier, the stoner paranoia. Like, I mean, just cutting about, traveling, when I'm going to the airport, even though I know I have nothing on me, because I would never go to an airport with drugs on me. I'm not that stupid. But even though I have nothing on me, I still shit myself. I'm still thinking, oh my God, I'm gonna get in trouble here. They'll swab my hands because I smoked a doob this morning, and then that's it, game over. Someone's having a deke in my butthole. Like, I don't know. It's just, I don't know, like, I suppose in a way it could attribute to some of my anxiety when I'm out and about, but now I've come to the mentality of the more blasé I am about it, the better. Because back in the day, I would be like, right, I want to smoke a doobie. I'm going to go down this dodgy little alleyway and I'm a shady little puff there. But that's worse because that just looks suspect. So now that I've become a bit more comfortable with it and I just cut about the city centre and just blaze my doob, like, I feel a lot better about it, for sure. But I don't feel like any of it causes my anxiety or depression. It's definitely beneficial for me, for sure. In every way, like I was saying earlier, sleep, appetite, social.
It's quite interesting because Justin Bieber partnered with the cannabis brand Palms Premium, or
Really?
I can't remember what the full title is. They've got a Mexican title. Can't think what it is off the top of my head. It's Palmas, something Palmas. Incorporated is the actual name of the company. But anyway, I digress. Peaches is the brand that have pre-rolled a 7-box of pre-rolled cannabis blunts under this joint banner of Justin Bieber. And he basically did this interview in, I can't remember which magazine it was, and he discussed sort of cannabis and mental health. He actually did an interview series on YouTube last year where he discussed sort of being exposed to cannabis at about 12, 13, similar age to yourself, and how that then he utilizes cannabis for dealing with sort of the stress of the job of being sort of somebody and having to worry about kind of stardom, of having fans, of then having to hone your craft and everything else. So is that something that you sort of share a commonality in?
Yes, it absolutely is. It absolutely is, because I mean, like I said, socially, I'm not good. I'm an introvert. You know, I would be quite happy just in my little room with my music, you know, but obviously I do want to share it with people. And cannabis really helps me to be able to get out there and to be on stage in front of all those people and battle my nerves. And yeah, it plays a big role in that, for sure. And it helps a lot with my creativity as well, you know, when I'm at home and I'm working on music, like, especially if I had a little smoke, a bit more adventurous with the stuff I'll play. And yeah.
Nice. Is it something that, I suppose, in conversations with other musicians, that you found that is common?
Yeah, definitely. I would say a good maybe 80% of the people that I've met in my industry are cannabis users.
Wow. How many of them then are also still alcohol consumers?
Probably still quite a lot of them, actually. I'm not gonna lie. There aren't very many that do the sober life on the alcohol front. But I do understand what the pressures are in that. So, I mean, fair play to them.
Do you think that then there is, only speculative, of course, here entirely, that alcohol is then also used within the music industry to self-medicate in the same sort of way?
Yeah, I reckon so. Dutch courage.
Yeah.
Help people get up there on stage, because it's terrifying. It's terrifying. And I do find a lot of artists, a lot of them are introvert. A lot of them do have anxiety. It's quite amazing the amount of artists that do. I was quite surprised when I found out how many do have mental health struggles. So I do believe that a lot of them will be definitely self-medicating with the booze to help them get up there and try and beat them demons in their head. Yeah.
Interesting. So this brings on to a question I wanted to ask you, being that you are the first sort of musician that I've had on the platform, which was what does the music industry look like if, say, post-legalization, post-prohibition, all drugs are all of a sudden, there's no criminalization, they're all accessible in some form. What do you think then a night out, a gig, an event looks like?
Well, I think things would be a lot safer if everything was legalized, first of all. there's been a lot of deaths recently because of bad pills and stuff. God rest his soul, literally just a couple of weeks ago. Very young lad, talented producer. Unfortunately, yeah, dodgy pill, and he's no longer with us. If things were legalized, it things would be done in a controlled way. Things would be tested, or at least there would be places where people could test their things, so they knew what was in it. There would be people there trained to know how to deal with people on certain substances. Like, I think the war on drugs is an absolute waste of time. I really do, because people are still going to go and do it. So why not make that as a safe environment for them to do so?
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, I'm trying to think who I spoke with. I think it was Danny Kushlik, the founder of Transform Drug Policy, who worked within the industry for 20 odd years. He gave a really sort of concise overview and narrative about sort of what happened with club night promoters and nightclub owners when the first rave scene sort of kicked off. And they recognized that actually, if we change the way we operate here, we start charging cover fees to get them in because they're not going to drink. They're all going to take pills anyway. We quietly start searching everybody in the door so that it's only our supply. We then sell through a system internally, and we provide free water. And they were making money hand over fist. You know what I mean? Then it came with a crackdown and change in licensing laws. Then it came with the Free Party Act of 94. It's not called the Free Party Act, but that's what colloquially most of us term it. And so they started to change the laws and regulations to try and get rid of our culture rather than embrace it. And I think exactly what you've said. Since then, there have been countless preventable deaths, not just from adulterants within substances, but from suicide, of people being excluded from society. Those same people that we spoke of before that would travel hundreds of miles to spend a few nights in a field with similar minded people, they do that because they feel so isolated and so alone. They don't feel commonality or acceptance in the local community. They
Absolutely.
are drowning in potential people to speak with, but no acceptance to speak of. Yeah, so I think that I agree that creating a space that allows that, and we already have the infrastructure. Nightclubs could be alcohol consumption spaces on Friday, Saturday, Sundays, and could be ecstasy spaces Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or could then have a psychedelics night for some nights. Could do
absolutely, that would be so good.
Yeah, for integrated infrastructure, and then as you said, you then just train your bar staff, then also become bud tenders. They also become, aware of how to give standard first aid, how to give basic intervention to people going through problematic issues, having
correct dosages and things like that. Like, honestly, it would be such a game changer. It really would. It would save so many lives.
Yeah, but I think that in order to get there, there needs to be an acceptance of how many people take drugs. So I suppose this leads us on to another question I wanted to ask you, in that you've performed quite a few festivals now, and you obviously travel around a lot on the scene. How many people do you think at an average festival are consuming drugs?
It's a high percentage. I'm not gonna lie. I especially notice it more now doing them sober, because obviously when I was drunk, I mean, you're on a kind of level with everyone else, even you're all different substances. You're still on a similar level. But now being sober, you really, really do notice it a lot. Oh, but I'm not laughing at them. I'm laughing with them, because I know how much fun they're having. I can see the pure joy on their face, even if like it is slightly contorted and staring at their brain a little. They're having the time of their life, It's definitely a lot. It's definitely a lot.
So then that kind of argues the point that we already have spaces of acceptance for sort of drugs. I mean, there's only one real event. Actually, I'll tell two anecdotes right now, I suppose. There's only really one festival that I've been to that made me feel really unsafe. I think it was the 2014 Boomtown.
Oh, really?
And or I might get the year wrong, but it was the year they had a Portuguese security firm in. Okay. And it was the year that a lot of people got robbed. Some of the security people, I think, were actually prosecuted. It was the second year we camped in downtown. And so we went in, we were in the heart of it, absolutely in the heart of it. And first night, 2 of the tents got robbed. Second night, I woke up with someone in the bottom of my tent, which was then somebody in a high-vis jacket. So we flashed torches on him. So I'm moving away through the crowd. And then on the Saturday, they were going after people rolling joints. Like literally, if you pulled out and you were rolling a joint, they'd pull you to the side, take all of your drugs off you. Then on the Sunday, we were sat in, because it was before the move Lion's Den. So it was the woods to the left of the Lion's Den, where some people have set up hammocks and stuff in there. It was always a very chilled vibe. And they were coming through in units of 4 and 5. And they were seeing anybody slightly not with it. And they were taking them to the side, literally like kind of half circle, going through the pockets and then booming off the move.
Oh my God.
And it was the most unsecure. I felt like I was going back to my tent to roll joints. Yeah. Like I was literally walking all the way back down Hippie Highway, roll 2 or 3 joints and head back out. And then literally people were then going inside of spaces to try and quickly like pop a pill or try and. So people are not measuring what drug they're doing. They're not going, that's about a right key that I want to take. They're just throwing whatever they can in them and hoping to not get caught up in it.
That's so bad. See, like, unfortunately, I haven't played Boomtown yet. I've been booked for the last 2 Boomtowns, but unfortunately, because of COVID, neither of those have happened. So fingers crossed for next year.
Fingers crossed as well. I mean, I've done to put it in context. I think I've done 7 Boomtowns. Every other year has been fucking amazing. It has been unreal. But that was the one year that it just.
Bad security firm by sound.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, they were just overkill, absolute overkill, and it really changed the dynamic of the evenings. Some of the evenings felt unsafe because everyone was on edge. Do you know what I mean?
It would do for sure, and that's the last thing you need at a festival, especially if people are taking drugs. People don't need to be made to feel uncomfortable or fearful, because that's just going to heighten all sorts of.
Yeah. We juxtapose that with what you were saying before about allowing testing. So the first year the Loop were there, that was set up by sort of Fiona Measham and other colleagues, and they did drug testing. They tested hundreds upon hundreds of samples, and they had, I can't remember the exact numbers, but I think it was 300 or 400 less interventions compared to the year before, because people knew what they were taking. I mean, it got to a point, I was sat in one of the shisha bars, we were having breakfast in there with a few of us. One of my mates bought some pills. And as the guy went to walk away, he turned back and he came and he put his hand on his shoulder and went, mate, they're strong as shit. Take half. You got harm reduction advice from a drug dealer. That's how fast the culture had changed. Rather than that dealer going, here, buy 5 or whatever to make me more money. He'd gone, no, they're strong as shit. You only take half.
Yeah.
It really changed the cultural dynamic. And I think the same is then true that if pubs, nightclubs, or if the town city centers and everywhere else where there is a lot of drug use being prevalently used, if it's more open and accepted, people will titrate their use better. People will be able to understand each other better, rather than just be like, dirty druggies, while they're necking their 12th pint, but just because they're on 2 pills and they're dancing, they're a bit sweaty, and they might have a bit of a gurn and their eyes are wide, but they're no threat to anybody. They're actually in such a loved up and euphoric mood. The worst they're going to do is want to cuddle you.
Exactly. That's it. That's the worst thing that's going to happen, is you're going to get a sweaty cuddle.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you said, if then the bartenders, as it were, the security, whoever else can be like, you're a bit warm. Do you want to go outside? We'll bring some cold water. Just take 5. If you could have that kind of advice, those kind of minor interventions not only saves lives, but it creates the culture where then people perpetuate that to each other. So I've been to free parties. I mean, we did the last Midge Fest up in Galloway Forest,
right?
And it's called Midge Fest because it used to be the start of every year, and it was like the Life for Land crew, so Ed Cox, Catch Pyro, them sort of guys, and is a BML sound from Scotland, and those guys.
Oh, yeah.
And and it was just unbelievable events there. But that was literally everything went wrong. The weather flooded out, the rigs all blew up, so we were all down to like 1 or 2 rigs, and then nobody could get out because it flooded that bad that the vehicles couldn't get out. So it just became this commune where everybody shared everything and everybody looked out for each other, and it was just for a few days it was nightmarish almost, because then when it started flooding the tents, and local tractor had to come and pull all the vehicles out, and we were building bridges in the ground to drag the cars out. But it was the community of it. If it was in a different culture, that would have torn each other apart. That could have become like Lord of the Flies.
Yeah, absolutely. If that had happened in a club, people would have been getting stamped on and pushed out the way and broken noses and all sorts. But them festivals and that, everyone's a family, you know, like we're in this together.
Yeah, and I think that you can see it as well. I mean, I did one year I did 6 festivals back to back, and so I booked it. So I was sleeping in fields and stuff between, or couch surfing, and just trying to kind of live that life for as long as possible, as it were. And the afterglow effect on my mentality and the way I engaged with everybody else, I tried to take the best ideals and values from a festival like environment and install them into my life. And in doing that, I found much more connection and community in people that otherwise I would have looked at and kind of, I guess, in my own prejudice and judgment, kind of gone, you're not like me. But actually, maybe they are. They're just, because of their job, their family, their role, they can't be as bold. They can't wear their lifestyle on their bodies, where they can't dress up as they wish. They have to be buttoned up and yeah, playing the game.
Yeah, it's a very eye-opening thing going into the festival life, for sure. It does widen your horizons, so to speak. You know.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see kind of how that would affect. I think it would make people more genuine, actually. I think if drugs were just accepted, I think it would make people a lot more genuine about and open about who they are. So rather than fearing the need of, well, I enjoy some cocaine at the weekend. Well, you just lost your job, you know.
Yeah,
we're going to take your kids from you. It's like, it's ridiculous. You can literally go into. There's not an office in this country for a job that you couldn't go into on a Monday morning and go, oh, I'm so fucking hungover, man. I had a hell of a weekend, and everyone like, whoa, what'd you do? What'd you get up to? And them actually engage in a jovial way for your self-destructive behavior. It's a mental sort of site. If you'd have gone in and you were coming down still, or if you'd been just went in hard on Saturday night, and then we ended up going through Sunday, and you've literally you face drug testing, you face sanction, and losing your job.
It's an absolute madness. People shouldn't be penalized for what they do in their own time. Like, I mean, if I wasn't a DJ, there's no way I could be as you know, if I worked in I don't know, an office job or whatever, I couldn't be as blasé about my cannabis use, because, like you say, I would probably get fired or drug tested, depending on what I was doing, you know. It's a little bit more openly accepted, cannabis within the music industry, thankfully.
Yeah.
Well, my music industry anyway.
I think it's, as you said, I think it is a cornerstone of the entirety of the industry, regardless of genre. I think people would be surprised how many pop stars, or, you know, your mom's favorite singer, it does a hell of a lot of drugs. You know what I mean? Just because they present an art form in one way doesn't indicate their inclinations towards getting fucked up, frankly. And I think people, again, that kind of self-installed prejudice that we have, that we see things as they are, and we go, well, we judge each other within a moment, go, what are you wearing, where do you come from, what job do you do, how do you speak? And within a few moments, we've got this image of who the hell you are. And it's one of the things I appreciate most about my ecstasy days is an extreme acceptance of just and a curiosity of the other, of just like, who are you, not in a sense so I can determine you and measure myself against you, but just as we're two magic monkeys that have crashed paths for a moment. Let's discuss what else we see.
And now we're best pals forever, and I love you.
Yeah. I've still got friends on Facebook that are literally like couples that I've met at gigs, and we've become like psychiatrists to each other. You know what I mean? They just unload, like, it's my trauma for years, and what you guys are, and acting like a marriage counselor to them and shit. And yeah, people from all over the world that I've been written as a thank you in somebody's dissertation for university, just because of one night that I met them when we were out on pills.
Yeah.
It's such a profound impact on that person's life and their work that they credited me on the first page of their dissertation.
That's
it's
amazing.
The power of these substances, man, are just they're unifying, they're bonding, and they strip away from us our own insecurities, our judgment, our own shortcomings and allow from a point of safety to see ourselves and kind of go, oh, bless you. Oh, you poor thing. Right, we'll do this, we'll change this, we'll mod this, we'll play with this. And you can, through that acceptance of yourself, really start to move forward to more towards who you want to be.
Yeah. Because they're out in the States and that at the minute. Are they not doing like microdosing and stuff with people now?
We're actually in the UK one of the world leaders in this.
So
are
we?
There's a clinic in London and one in Birmingham, not Birmingham, sorry, Bristol.
Not Scotland,
then. Not Scotland, as it would seem, but we can discuss why in a moment. It'll be a bit boring for you, but I'll tell you why. So in Bristol and in London, there is the Awaken Life Sciences clinics, which is run by Dr. Ben Sessa, and they're doing ketamine infusions, so intravenous ketamine as an antidepressant. But they're involved in trials around, they were using LSD for alcoholism, MDMA for PTSD, DMT for depression, and things like this. So there's a hell of a lot of studies going off in various places. The biggest study that's coming out on MDMA is MAPS, the multi-action psychedelic something or other. I can't remember what the acronym is for MAPS, but they partnered with the Veterans Association in America. And so they're on phase 3 trials of MDMA for PTSD, because they obviously now America has more deaths from sending soldiers to war from suicide than combat deaths, because of the travesty of complex PTSD and the detrimental effects of kind of what they're forced to do out there. And so, they've put a hell of a lot of money to try and help these kind of people deal with that sort of trauma. So I think that's going to give us these new toolkit. I mean, in the UK, for example, the Parliament are trying to figure out how to reschedule psilocybin, but only for medical purposes. So we can't go out, as now is the season, go find anywhere that's had heavy animal agriculture, especially sheep. For some reason, psilocybin mushrooms, especially the beecaps, love sheep.
I field the other day that was actually ideal,
They were everywhere. This is the wonderful thing of it. They pop up all over the goddamn place. And until 2005, you could have a black sack of them full, wet, and you were fine. But once you dried them, then it was illegal. Then they changed the law around picking, meaning that if you then literally kind of, oops, I broke it. What's this? You're in possession now of a Class A drug. So they're going to create this 2-tier system, the same as they have with Equo's medical cannabis, going that if you pay from us and we're your dealer, you're fine. You grow it at home or buy from a dealer, then you're in trouble.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that as well, because I was literally in my chemist like the other week, and I wish I had the leaflet to hand. It's the first time that I've seen it, but there was a leaflet talking about getting medical cannabis, and I had a little read of it and it was quite expensive for what they would class as a month supply. I think it was about £175, but they didn't specify what they class as a month supply. But it's just the first time that I've seen anything of the like in Scotland. So I mean, that kind of gives me like just a little bit of hope that maybe things are moving forward a little bit.
I mean, it's moving, but I mean, I've been speaking of a co-option of, I suppose, like a quiet coup that has been occurring, in that it's kind of helping if then we want to be a medical patient. If you then want to go, okay, yes, I'm a patient, even like yourself, so you've said it helps with anxiety. So I also agree that cannabis consumption helps with my anxiety. It also helps with depression and other more complex mental health conditions that I'm currently fighting, ironically, with them about cannabis to get re-diagnosed, but that's neither here nor there. But the mechanism is that if you become an accepted medical patient, you can then get prescribed and get it from them, and you pay your prescription cost. And eventually, that will get low enough and it will become a thing. But to me, it feels disingenuous. I'm not a medical patient. I'm not advocating for that system. I'm happy for that system to exist and for people that want to operate within it. My larger argument is that if cannabis was ubiquitously legalized and everywhere it was accessible and I could freely grow it, then that's the option that I would make. I don't want my safety and my protection to be at the behest of millions of other people that don't also want to sign that piece of paper and say, I'm a patient. I don't want my mental health to be dealt with in a mental health capacity like that. I
Yeah,
want to take
totally.
have autonomy over my own health and then choose like.
Yeah,
But it's the same to me as smoking cannabis. The same as going for a walk in nature. I'm
yeah,
making a
yeah, yeah.
deliberate choice to do something to remove
Choice.
myself from a stressful environment or situation, to give myself time to calm down, to boost my neurology, to boost my neural chemistry, and to allow myself to think through
Yeah.
whatever situation I'm faced with.
No, you're absolutely right though. I do agree. It just kind of gave me hope that maybe like if that is the way things are going, maybe we will start moving towards the full legalization. I mean, we can
Hmm.
only hope, right?
I think you guys are closer though, to be honest with you. So I
Oh,
think
I fully believe Scotland will do it before England. Fully believe it.
like if you guys get Indie Ref 2 as a yes vote, then I honestly believe that there wouldn't be a reason not to, even if the Scottish Parliament didn't do it independently. I think what's quietly happening in Europe at the minute. So there's a case in France at the minute that's just been referred back to the European courts of Cannabis. I butcher the pronunciation. Sorry, my French listeners. Cannabis. I was going to say Cannabis, but it's not. It's kind of you know the company I mean. And so basically they'd taken the French government to the European court to say that their ban on CBD was illegal because the European Union declared CBD is not a narcotic. And so
Right.
they're bouncing this back because the French government are now saying still trying to put restrictions on it. I think ultimately this is going to lead to a European ruling that means if Scotland goes independent and tries to join Europe, they would kind of
Yeah.
fall into that remit automatically. But an
Uh-huh.
independent Scotland with its oil reserves and with cannabis cultivation would be a global powerhouse. They really would. We've known for decades now that the economic potential and the boost that Scotland gives to the UK is far more than the UK gives back to Scotland. And I think when enough of the population realise that, and if then the SNP do get this additional vote, then it would be a matter of time. And quite a lot of us Northerners have said for a while we're happy to move the border down to Hadrian's Wall, and
Yeah, extend the border,
got
innit?
some
You can come
Scottish
join
mates.
us.
Yeah, yeah, and I can see
Totally.
I could see it. I mean, it's weird that we live in such a time. It's another kind of a question I wanted to lead on to. Is it kind of the consequences of Brexit on the world has just been woof, for not phenomenal. And so one thing I did want to ask you is, as a touring musician, how is it sort of affecting you?
So to be honest, I haven't actually like fully looked into the legalities of it yet because Europe is a nut that I haven't really cracked yet. I mean, I've done Germany and Amsterdam a couple of times, but my next goal would have been to line up a European tour. But obviously now that's not something that I can just go and do as freely as I could before. Now that requires like work permits, visas. I don't even know if it would be like per individual country or if I could get one for the whole, but it adds like a whole expense. And it has such a knock-on effect as well, because if I then need to charge more money to go and do a tour there, that means that the people booking me then need to pay more money, which means they need to hike up the ticket prices, which means the punters then have to pay for more expensive tickets. And it's fucking shit, quite frankly.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't really know until I fully actually sit and look into it and do some proper reading. I'm still kind of in the dark, but I know that I can't just go and do what I could have done before Brexit. It's a bit of a shitter.
That's a shame. I mean, you would hope with sort of the return of live music and them trying to figure out insurances around larger events that there will be looking at this. I imagine there will be the creation, if there hasn't already been, of some sort of special visa to allow for it. Because it
Artist
wouldn't
visa
it
would
would
be the one.
it would make sense. And you've got to think of some of the large acts that actually reside in the UK. That yeah.
It's a great thing for countries as well because of the tourism.
Mm,
Like people travel all over to come to gigs in the UK and everywhere else. You know, people will come from Europe to come see people here. We book people from Europe to come here, but now how feasible is that with the venues that we're losing all of those? Those are dropping every day.
That's another reason in my mind, why the hell you wouldn't. The other one is literally pubs during the day, a dead trade. You don't almost want to encourage excess alcohol consumption during the day. Whereas
Yeah.
something a bit softer like cannabis, for example, So you could have a cannabis club during the day, alcohol consumption space on evenings, and like you say, then on special nights,
Mm,
ecstasy, some nights are psychedelic events, and you can make them
mm,
bespoke to the local community, and everything that you are supplying is regulated, is traceable. There's
mm-hmm.
an accountable supply chain for it. Um,
Absolutely.
but the system that they've created is so ridiculous and so multi-layered in bureaucracy that I remember talking to said Dr. Ben Sessa a few years ago, and he was saying the MDMA that they acquired for their trial cost them nearly £1 million because it had the procedures that it had to go through, the places that had to be producing a certain thing. You then have to buy a license for control. You then have to buy a license for like research. You then have to
Yeah.
build a facility that is then up to standard. Then a storage, like the actual container that it stays in has to be a standardized one. Then it has to be in a specific locked cabinet, then in a locked room. And there's just so many different things they had to jump through to
Wow.
create just the ability to then do that.
Yeah,
Whereas if you then
absolutely.
you go on the dark web and noise up a Dutch chemist, you can have keys in no time of not quite as pure as it used to be sort of end 90s, early noughties, because a lot of the
Mm,
precursor chemicals are so highly criminalized
mm-hmm.
that they're not produced in the same way. One of our earlier guests was a chemist, and
Okay.
she quietly informed us that I think there's 140 ways to synthesize 140 plus ways to synthesize MDMA.
Holy shit.
So yeah, you can see why there's not a standardization. Then you've got, because of
Yes.
prohibition,
Yes.
PMA and things like this that are they act in a similar way. And for your novice,
Yeah.
you're not really gonna notice until you get 20 hours in and you're still like, this isn't what I was expecting. I'm still like
Mm,
really going with it. Whereas I think it's probably one of the reasons I kind of fell out of love with, I think, with MDMA towards
yeah.
my mid-20s was that it just wasn't MDMA. The pills
Mm-hmm.
that were around were, one evening we were at a friend's house and we all ended up with something that was laced with PCP. And so the visual tripping sensation on top of it was so overwhelming,
Yeah. Yeah.
so overwhelming. One of our mates was upstairs screaming that they were on the toilet and they were falling through the floor.
Oh no,
It's
bless.
just, yeah, so it was just such a like okay, we're not going out tonight, because everyone had like, we're
Yeah.
preload, we'll head out, and then everyone went, this isn't
Especially
right.
when you're not expecting it as well. Like you should know when you're taking something what that is going to make you feel like. So when you
Yeah,
get that curveball of hang on,
yeah,
this is not right.
yeah,
Like, oh
yeah,
no, it's
yeah.
not good.
If you go out drinking vodka Red Bulls expecting that uprush of the sugariness and the caffeine and everything else, and you drink it and you get really lethargic and depressed and like can't really
Mm,
open your eyes, it messes with your head, because then
yeah,
you start thinking, well, what's going on? This is not what I expected the outcome to be.
yeah.
Yeah, then there was pills started to get adulterated with things like ketamine and stuff like that, and people were selling it on, oh, it's shards, it's shards. It's like, no, there's a reflection of a shard. You are correct, but that is not glassed MDMA. That
Yeah,
is ketamine.
yeah.
And so it was ridiculous, and all of the adulterants that were then pouring into them, it just, yeah, it got dangerous as a marketplace. And then obviously things like Silk Road and that became very popular,
Yes.
and so certain people were able to get access to certain things, but then all of a sudden got access to a lot of other things that, frankly, we shouldn't have access to. There's a lot of I call them the ABC drugs,
Mm-hmm.
that, yeah, everyone has the free right to explore their consciousness and take whatever they wish. But if the reason you're taking one of these alphabet drugs is because you think, oh, it'll give me the MDMA effect, but I don't have to risk class A charges,
Mm-hmm.
then you're not understanding, because the difference of the effects can be dramatic. Even just
Yeah,
of the two CI families, the
yeah,
differences between them of B and I, etc., is drastic.
yeah.
And you can't tell that from looking at the powder in the bag. You can't even tell that really from the taste of the smell.
Mm-hmm.
So it's Russian roulette. And I think that, as we've said, a regulated marketplace means that if you
Yeah.
know exactly what you're getting, then the chances of you having an adverse effect are not gone, but they are greatly reduced.
Absolutely. Another thing that I think that we really, really, really need to sort the fuck out in the music industry is why are all clubs and events not giving out anti-spiking kits? Because it is rife at the minute. There's a lot of women that are unfortunately getting roofied. Not just women, obviously it happens to men too. Like it's really, really rife in the club scene at the moment, and it's something that, quite frankly, needs fucking addressed.
Yeah.
Like it's just not a safe place for people at the minute. It's
Mhm.
very scary.
Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of measures that can be taken into consideration there. So you have stoppers for drinks and things like that.
Hmm.
You could actually go as far as creating bioluminescent markers that could
Hmm.
be added that actually could be non-toxic. I'm literally pulling this out of my ass as I'm thinking about it, so don't chastise me in the comments below, guys. Like a bioluminescent marker or a chemical that it would be non-toxic to humans, but that would then react in the presence
Yeah.
of GBH and things like that, that could then show.
I swear they invented a nail varnish that does this. The girls, they paint their nail varnish, and if they dip their finger in the drink and it changes color, I swear that means that something has been added to the drink. But obviously, it's just not necessarily something everyone's going to have. I feel like,
Nor should it be the responsibility of a potential victim to protect themselves. This is what I'm
right?
saying. So,
Shouldn't have to sit there in fear thinking, right, I need to put like my anti-rape nail paint on before I go out. Like that's a scary
yeah,
thought process to go outside with, really.
yeah, and I mean, it's again, there's there are certain aspects of nightlife that are the reasons why people want to go out, but they are also the reasons that we are made most vulnerable. The darkness, the loud music, the close quarters of people moving through areas, the fact of being allowed, frankly, to get that intoxicated on something that makes us quite vulnerable. I mean, I don't advocate that anybody takes to excess anything if they
No,
believe that
no,
it's going to make them,
moderation.
yeah, if they feel that they're not capable of controlling it.
Mm,
But I feel that alcohol is one of those substances that whispers more to you,
yeah,
that just goes another one, and it just goes, because it's liquid, it just goes down, and one more, oh, go on, then he's buying, it's not going to cost me anything, and you accumulate into these positions that, I mean, most times I've realized I'm drunk is when I get home, and I kind of have that, my reality hits me, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, how did I, whoa, and to then have that vulnerable feeling of, how did I get here? How much
yeah.
money have I spent? Who did I interact with? What did I say?
Very scary. I've woken up the next day, no recollection of how I've got home. Like leaving the venue, nothing, and that's fucking terrifying. That was another reason why I was like, no, I'm not doing this anymore, because I'm putting myself in a really dangerous position by doing this. Like, it's crazy.
Mhm. But again, we shouldn't then demonize the individuals that do that. I've been
Oh
that
no, of
person.
course.
I mean, I've drank too much and I've been carried out of places. I've
Yeah,
passed out on drugs. I've whited myself into oblivion.
yeah,
And it's a rite of passage almost. And it's the reason that I survived that and I got through that is the culture and the communities that I was hanging around with that was accepted. It wasn't, oh my God, you druggie, whatever. It's like, happens to the best of us, kid. Come with
yeah,
me out of the way. We'll
absolutely.
get you hydrated. We'll get a bit of food in you.
Hmm.
I'll hang about. Oh, I'm going to go dance for a bit, but Dave's going to look after you or whatever. There was always a camaraderie and a culture, and there wasn't the same competitive, almost rival, tribal nature that I found in just drinking. That if I
Yeah.
passed out around people drinking, I felt vulnerable. People
Hmm.
say, "Oh, I'm going to stack shit on you and draw shit on your face," and it was just a different kind of environment. Whereas then, if passing out from a house party from pills or whatever, and I wake up in a bed that someone like take upstairs and put the duvet over you, to put a
Yeah.
pillow. There's a thing of water next to you. Someone's put a bucket on the floor.
Yeah.
No one's interfered with it. Someone's then gone outside, shut their oh, thingy's asleep, and they stay out of the way. Sort of, again, different kind of culture. And I think,
Ravens are so caring, aren't they? Like, we really
yeah,
do look out for one another.
yeah, but it's a weird mentality. I think that we almost overcare, and this is why we have a susceptibility, or maybe it's that we already have that susceptibility to mental health problems, in that we go, oh, screw me, engage in others.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it is weird that, yeah, I've been to free parties where then people are vulnerable because of their own behavior, but safe because of others.
Hmm.
So no one's really looking out for themselves, but everyone's looking out for everyone. And
Yeah.
do you know what I mean? I think that's the opposite of the mainstream of the culture, which is, I'm looking out for me, screw everybody else. I think that's why these two worlds, they live separately. And I
Yeah.
think that, as we've discussed, whether it be legalizing all drugs and creating social spaces, or kind of figuring out ways to transfer the festival ethos and philosophy into mainstream life, I think
Yeah.
would be hugely beneficial for millions of people.
It really would. It would be so good. And I love your idea of having like the ecstasy nights, the psychedelic nights. I think that's fucking brilliant. That's genius.
It doesn't require
Dragon's Den, let's
yeah.
go.
Well, yeah, I mean, the government has created licensing for this. Pardon.
Yeah.
So you can actually pay the Home Office to have a dangerous drug license to hold ecstasy or to hold LSD. So the issue is then around it's illegal to sell it. It's also illegal to then profit from it under the Proceeds of Crime Act. So what you could then do is what Colorado did for the first year of legalization. Nobody sold weed, you gifted it. So I give you an ounce and you went, oh my God, I'm so grateful for this. Can I give you $200? Yeah, of course you can. Thank you. Or they'd buy a lighter for $200 and it would have an ounce of weed attached to it. Do you know what I mean? It's so
buy a ticket to this event and you get a free tab of LSD.
Yeah, the ticket is some acid sort of. You could do all sorts. So there are ways that we wouldn't necessarily have to modify the certain laws. What we need is discretion of police and councils to let us try this. There are hotspots all over the country where free parties go down, where each generation inherits that location. You know what I mean? There's a bunch of 18-year-olds, 40 of them, and then they pass it down to the next lot when they age out. And we have these rites of passage, these ceremonies, these celebrations, these carnivals of life. And we can bring that into the mainstream. We can allow that to be normalized. And can you imagine if you brought the same creativity, compassion, and love that you'd take to a free party to the office on a Monday? If you were allowed to be that weird, that wonderful, that beautiful and creative, instead of just having to go, oh, well, not allowed any colors, not allowed anything that expresses individuality, not allowed to do anything outside of the norm.
No tattoos, no colorful hair, nothing. What's that all about?
And I think we grow closer to that every day, every week, every year, because every day another person turns 16, 17 and goes to their first rave or sneaks into their first nightclub, or they get their first experience of a life that they were not prepared for. And they go on this wonderful journey of exploration and get to find themselves through the medium of music. And as you said before, music has taught me so much, because as a kid I was so narrow-minded. I was a victim of a lot of abuse. I was in a very difficult childhood, and I was mainstreamed. So I learned culture through films and TV. I was agoraphobic as a kid. I was an insomniac as a kid, so I would just watch movies and absorb. And it wasn't until my late teens or early to late teens that I really kind of discovered other music. I remember being sort of 12, 13 and hearing Wu-Tang for the first time, being like, what the fuck? And then going into this thing of this hip hop, this rap, and because I was only exposed to the radio music or what my mother had as a CD collection. You know what I mean? And then when friends were getting into music, they'd say names and things. And I was like, I don't know. My world was too chaotic to take in new information. And then when I started to learn about all these different genres and to start to accept these different sounds and understand the humanity that pervades all of it, that it's people that have sat down to try to convey a feeling, a sensation, an idea, a concept to another human through a medium that isn't language, it isn't written, it isn't as easy as a conversation. And I think it's inspired it's inspired me to really try to get to grips with the idea that I know fucking nothing. Do you know what I mean? Because I'll discover a new sound or this, and someone will go, have you heard this artist? Have you heard this? There's billions more musicians than I can ever know of. And so it always humbles me every time I hear something new or something new comes into my life, and I'm like, oh, I like that. What is that? And then you're scratching at something going, I didn't even know that was a genre. There's subgenres of this. And then there's all these lifestyle and culture, and it just, it's refreshing to be reminded and humbled of how small my knowledge base could ever be on something like this.
Bless you. No, do you know what, have you ever written a book?
I'm trying to outline a book at the minute. The problem is that I found with most of the blogs and the articles that I write and I've written over the years, I start writing about one thing and I end up going, oh, but this and this is it and this and this and this is linked to this and to this. And so it's kind of trying to zoom out enough to figure out the narrative, the core narrative that I can build around it. But it is something that I've been driven to. I did one of those career aptitude tests as a kid in school, and went through it all, and it came back author. And I was so pissed off that I went back through it again and changed all my answers, and it still came back author. and I was crap. I got kicked out of mainstream school, so I didn't attend mainstream education, so I got very few qualifications. And English was my most hated lesson, probably something to do with the teacher.
Yeah.
But I just couldn't deal with it. It's like, can you hear me talking? I know English. Leave me the fuck alone. And then it's like, yeah, kind of moved into this kind of work. And throughout most of my life, people have said, you should write a book. You should write a book.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I want to. I just don't know about what yet.
It's honestly, see, just the way you speak, like I don't even know how to phrase it. Like you have quite a captivating way of speaking about things, and
Thank
you
you.
would write like a really good book. I think I genuinely think that. But on the subject of schools and stuff, like school is a fucking waste of time, right? They teach you shit that you don't need in life. Like why are they teaching people about Pythagoras' theorem, right?
Oh my
Why
God.
are they not
I just need to interject a second there, because that was exactly what came into my fucking head was Pythagoras' theorem. That was literally, of all the things, that was the first example that came in my head. Sorry, go on.
Like, when have you ever used that in your puff? Ever?
Yeah.
I would love to know in the comments. Like, you watch loads of engineers are going to be like, I use it daily.
Well, actually, they probably won't. They'll use an app for it now, or they'll use a hotkey or something on Excel that does it sort of job, you know?
But like, why didn't they teach us things like how to pay your bills, how to do your taxes? Like, why did they not give us actual useful life skills? You know, and then there's so much pressure put on you at such a young age. Like, you must decide what you want to do for the rest of your life at 14, 15, 16 years old. Like, what's that all about? I was clueless at 16. I thought I wanted to go and do childcare. I hate kids. That's what that made me realize. I went to college. I had 30 kids running around my ankles, and I was like, I fucking don't like kids. I don't. And I don't mean that in a mean way. Obviously, children they're wonderful. They're amazing. One at a time is probably pretty cool, but nah, man, 30 of them. Fuck that.
Yeah, it's exactly that. It's geared the wrong way.
Mhm.
So it gives everybody a blanket, homogenized, standardized education of going, well, it's still, why the hell the Battle of Hastings is in my head. Of all of the things for history that I actually remember learning in school, Battle of Hastings, William the Conqueror, and that shit is there. It's just there.
Yeah.
But then I've learned most of the stuff I've learned about history, I've learned since leaving school.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think the mechanism's the other way around, because what it should do is be able to help people like yourself identify, do you like kids in a work environment? No, well, then we'll not get you into that. We should be identifying the strengths, the likes, and the things that the children are best at and show the best acumens in, and then honing their skills within that. So if they come and they're a caring individual at school, then they want to work in healthcare, then you nurture that, because that's a rarity. Someone that actually is willing to clean up shit and vomit and deal with the heartache and
seriously, hats off to them people. Like,
yeah, agreed. And they should be rewarded for this. And they work for tuppence. They do it because they have a burning desire inside to help others, and it makes them feel good. And if we had the mechanism in primary and secondary education to identify those markers in children, can you imagine what they would what they would actually avoid going through, and what's the structure, how the structure of society would change? Because instead of having the crises through their 20s, of suddenly going, well, I've been an adult for a while now, and nothing has happened like they said it would happen. None of the things that have actually happened, they told me would happen. I have no grounds for anything. I've just crashed out of puberty, and I'm no longer driven in the same way. I'm in a society that now no longer values me because I'm too old and I've aged out of the ideal demographic. Where do I fit in the world? What do I do? Like, I'm 33 now, and I'm constantly having the crisis that I'm effectively the generation that in a few years are going to be the ones ruling the fucking world.
Yeah.
This age with me, I don't know shit. I don't. Some mornings I wake up and I'm literally just like, what is going on? Like, I was sat with one of my friends the other day for 10 minutes with my head in my hands, just shaking back and forth, because I couldn't grasp the state of the world. We were talking about something in South America, and it led to like a tirade of shit that I talked about. And then I was just like, how does any of this make any, like, what? And you're telling me that people of my age are then going to be running the country, running the world?
I'm the same age as you, I'm 32, so we're same bracket. Do you know what I mean? And honestly, I know fuck all. Like, I couldn't organize a piss up in a brewery, let alone like run a country. Like, are you mad?
But again, neither can that generation. So the scariest realization I had is also the most comforting. there are no adults. We are just perpetual kids that learn how to fake it better. So the guys at 70, I mean, I remember toward the later part of her life, I traveled down to see her and we spent sometimes 8-9 hours just sat. I mean, one day we were sat, I got at 9 o'clock at night and we hadn't turned the light on because we were just so into the conversation. And as part of that conversation, I asked her, I was like, do you wake up feeling old? Like, do you get out of bed and go like, oh, I'm old as shit? And she's like, no, sometimes I wake up and I forget. I wake up and I'm like, I'm going to jump out. I'm like, right. And it's as soon as I go to do anything, this wave of, oh.
I get sore bones now. What's that all about?
Oof.
Why are my bones sore? What's happening? All I did was sleep all night.
It's a mental sort of state. But you're saying that, like, you have these kind of constant realizations that I'm the old person now. I'm the old person because we only ever live in today. So our brain doesn't really ever think that we're old. It's not until like you hear the joke of the dad who bends down to help get the kids toy and he goes, oh, my back, and realized I was old today sort of job. And
I did that like 3 times yesterday.
But it's weird that it's mental to me that we don't talk about any of the things that we're actually experiencing, because for a lot of our generation, the things that we're not allowed to talk about. We grew up in drug cultures at raves, and we have ideas and concepts of societal models and of ways of living and of alternative ideas and ways of thinking and a universal acceptance of everybody basically that isn't fit for the mainstream because they don't want to allow us to be there. So it's frustrating in the feeling that not to say that we have the answers. We're young and fucking idiots, but I feel that eventually we're going to be put in a position where they're going to ask us for those answers. And I think that our experiences with an illegal drug culture, with the rave scene, and with the alternative communities that we've been brought up in is going to serve us well. And I hope that when it comes to our turn to facing the kind of crisis we've just lived through, or dealing with how we deal with the old people as a society, how we deal with homelessness or whatever else, that our compassion and our connection and our idea that we're all worth something will permeate through, you know?
Yeah, fingers crossed, because it's been some pretty dark times. It's really just strange times to be living in, to be honest, like especially the last couple of years. It's been a bit, I don't want to go into that, but yeah, it's been bizarre.
It's interesting though, because I feel that I came to a point of acceptance many years ago through the help of, predominantly LSD, that I don't need to understand shit. I just need to accept that it's happening. And since I've kind of done that, my life has advanced a lot further and I feel a lot happier in what I'm doing day to day. I don't need a grand myth or a grand sort of underlying narrative or story that I have to tell myself to keep going. I wake up, I got today, then let's see what happens kind of thing. And you carry through certain ideas and certain concepts and goals and drives. But if you can arrive at that point of acceptance, then I think that life just becomes a hell of a lot easier. And I think, again, if our generation can be given more control, then it'll reduce our anxiety and our social anxiety and this struggle that we have to be together unless we're taking drugs or we're drinking, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thus ends the philosophical part of this. I suppose I've got a quick few speedy questions for you, and we'll round this up because I'm quite aware that you've given me a good amount of time here, and I do appreciate that.
I have no idea what the time is.
It's 20:03, so it's
we've had a good wee waffle.
Good hour and a half. We have.
Yeah, go on.
All right, then I'll hit you with a couple of quick fire questions. Sorry if these put you on the spot a bit. What's been sort of your favorite night or event that you have played so far?
I mean, it's a toss-up between two. I mean, Glastonbury, hands down, just because I never in my wildest dreams ever thought I would perform at Glastonbury. Like, that is still a pinch me moment. I will never, ever, ever forget it. I will remember that for the rest of my fucking days. And a recent one, actually, a couple of weeks ago, Woodlands in Scotland. It's in a place called Vorgie Park, just 20 minutes outside of Edinburgh, organised by a crew called Electrical. and it was just a rave in the woods, but it was like, I don't know, just the first kind of proper big decent party that I'd been to outside of obviously Paradise Gardens and whatnot. But it was just the first one that I'd been to since sort of COVID, where there was that many people there, that many smiley faces, and I had a couple of emotional moments. I'm not gonna lie, I got teary a few times. It was beautiful, and I'll definitely remember that one forever, like for sure.
Oh, that's illustrative. Yeah, I bet it was kind of, was it the sense of, I imagine there was points during the peak of this that you kind of maybe felt like you were never going to be able to perform again.
Yeah, I really did. I like for sure. Like I thought, like life was over. Like we're never going to be able to have clubs again or parties again or just normality, you know. And now we're starting to get back to that. It's overwhelming, but it's amazing. It's a really good feeling. Really good.
Oh, nice. I suppose that leads us on quite well to the next question then. So I suppose if we do get back to some sense of normality and the scene starts to build up again, who would be sort of your ideal artist to go back to back with?
Okay, I mean, living in dreamland.
Oh yeah, go all the way out there.
It would be Randall, hands down. He's been my hero forever. Just his style of mixing, his selection. I've never actually met him yet, so I mean, hopefully one day I get that opportunity. Uh, but yeah, to play a back to back set with him, I would fangirl so hard. I'm telling you, it is absolute bucket goals. But another one that I would like to do that like with my crew then really obviously DJ Hybrid, who I have played back to back with now, but I would like to do a three-way back to back with him, Conrad Subs, Veek, and myself. So like the four of us doing like a four-way back to back. That honestly would be fucking amazing. And if there's any promoters out there that want to make that shit happen, hello.
Rah, rah. All right, yeah, fingers crossed. We'll put that out in the universe, and it's good. Let it go through the mill and see what comes out on the other side. There's another question. I'm trying to frantically read through my notes here. What's your sort of your favorite? Because obviously you've expressed quite a diversity of genre of music that you do like and enjoy. So what's sort of your favorite music to enjoy sort of live, to dance to rave to experience?
Last night, definitely ska and punk. Like that's pretty much where my heart and soul is at, because it's very very similar to drum and bass, because the tempos they're very very upbeat, both happy music, especially the style of drum and bass jungle I like. It's very happy stuff, and it takes a lot of influence from ska and reggae. So yeah, ska and punk, and 90s hip hop. None of this drivel that they call hip hop nowadays. No. But like, you, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. So for the audience at home, Miss Magoo went to go see Sponge last night.
Oh,
So,
they were so
yeah,
good. They were so good.
do
Oh my
check them
God.
out, and you can check out a video of Miss Magoo having a nice little dance on her Instagram page as well at the
Yeah.
minute.
I'm actually wearing some of their merch right now, so cheeky little plug for Sponge, like massive
Hey.
big ups. Go check them out if you like your scan punk. Seriously, wicked performance. Do it.
Yeah, and exactly that. If you are trapped somewhat in a musical genre you feel you only like, try to understand or learn how they influence each other. Most music is built on top of influence from other, quite often not diametrically opposing, but very different sounds. And it's often through that mashup and that mix up the new
Like
genres are
melting pot.
created. Yeah. And so you can see that in, I suppose, what became especially Raggatech.
Yes.
You know, that took a hell of a lot. That was just sped up reggae to a lot of degree. That's oversimplifying it. There's a lot of talent that's gone into it and in production of the music. I didn't mean it like that, but I meant that in its overly simplistic way.
Yeah.
But yeah, widen your horizons, folks. If you haven't listened to any drum and bass or jungle before, do check it out. I will drop some links below to your music. I suppose
Nice one.
this leaves us only with one final question, which is the question I
Oh,
ask everybody, which is, what does the future hold for you?
what does the future hold? Well, I've actually got another two tunes coming out this year, which I'm so excited for everybody to hear. One of them is a remix that myself and DJ Hybrid have done of a Toby Ross and Oram tune called Baddest Sound. Um, I'm honestly so excited for everybody to hear that. It's fucking amazing. Tooting my own horn a wee bit there, but like we worked like so hard on this remix. We put a lot into this, so like I feel proud of it.
Mhm.
And another one that we haven't named it yet, is a three-way collab with myself, DJ Hybrid, and Conrad Subs, who is like one of my heroes when it comes to production. So we have literally just finished getting that done. Um, so now we need to kind of think up of a name. So if anyone's got any name suggestions, that would be great, you know?
Mm.
Um, yeah, that'll be dropping later on this year too. So I'm like super excited for people to hear more of what we've been cooking up in the studio for sure.
Excellent, excellent. So, where can people sort of check out your music and keep up to date with sort of shows and what you're working on?
Okay, so music releases, they'll probably be Spotify. So you can find me on Spotify, Mrs Magoo. But Facebook and Instagram is genuinely the best places to follow me for everything. If you just search Mrs Magoo, you'll find me. It's easy enough. All of my gigs, all of the live streams and everything, they all get posted on there. Yeah.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I will include some links in the bio below.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank
Do I get to ask you a question?
Ooh, you'd be the first guest in a year to do so. Go on then. Go on then.
Really?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so bucket list person for you to interview, who would it be?
Oh,
Anybody.
wow, wow.
Yeah, now
Anybody.
you're feeling the pressure.
Oh, I am. 'Cause I'm trying to read. Like, I wrote a very ambitious list for guests, and I'm trying to like kind of look through that in my head. But I'm trying to get rid of that and go, no, actually, anybody.
Yeah, like reach for the
Um,
stars.
I'd quite like to have a conversation with. These are quite juxtaposed different characters, really, but the two minds that came to mind for two quite different reasons would either be Stephen Fry or Russell Brand.
Oi, good choice is Stephen Fry though. Yeah, man.
Yeah, I think Stephen Fry, I've never really heard him speak on the subject of drugs or
Yeah,
on
damn
sort of the
interesting.
culture of it. And I think that the parallels that I've drawn previously around the fight for acceptance of difference in sexuality is
Mhm.
quite parallel to the fight for acceptance of, well, just the right to take drugs, let alone the medical benefits, etc. of them. And I think that would be really interesting. I think Russell Brand as well, because he's lived a sober life. I think
Yes.
that we share a great deal of commonality in our philosophy and our approach to things. Not that I'm comparing myself on the same level at all,
I get what you
but
mean.
I think that we've both kind of arisen to a similar spiritual ideology, but through two very different routes. And I think a conversation about that would be just amazing to have quietly, let alone on the podcast, you know?
Yeah, for sure. He actually surprised me because I just presumed obviously from seeing him on TV, like, you know, it was just some funny dude. But then I actually like watched some of his stuff, and he is a very, very clever man. Very
Mm.
clever man. And I fully believe that that would be a really good interesting conversation to have, especially from his perspective to yeah, that would be a good one. You'll make it happen, man. You stick at this shit, it'll happen. Trust.
Yeah, I'm here for a long time. Everyone knows that I like to talk shit. So anyone that's willing to listen or sit in the hot seat, I'm quite happy to take on. But yeah, thank you so much for your time today. Really do appreciate it. I've thoroughly enjoyed this and do hope that we can continue these conversations moving forward.
Yeah, no worries at all. Thanks again for having me on the show. Like, it's been a pleasure. Great to catch up with you again, and definitely keen for another chat at some point, or hopefully we'll see you in a field soon.
Yeah. Well, perfect. We'll try and maybe get you on and do a little bit of promo around new music release later on in the year once you've figured out a name.
Aye, that would be grand, actually. I'd appreciate that.
Would be. I'll be picking your brains at some point for other musical guests that would be willing to jump in the seat and let me pick the
Oh
brains for
yeah,
a bit.
definitely.
Sweet. So thank you again for making the time. Thank you at home, folks, for listening to this nearly 2 hour long podcast. Again, been a wonderful chat. Do check out Mrs Magoo everywhere in the links below. Check out the Simpa Life at patreon.com/Simpa Life to help me keep this little project going for less than a cup of coffee a week. Find us on all social media platforms at the Simpa Life. And yeah, I will see you fine folks. I was going to say next week. It's next year's worth of podcasting. So exciting. All right, folks. Peace and love.